When I first heard about Waggles, the pet food startup, I was really curious. Not only does it make all the pet food in Pakistan, it also has export ambitions, which makes sense. Globally, the pet food market is $95 billion. But how about Pakistan? How big is the market in Pakistan? More importantly, what are some of the challenges of building a pet food brand in Pakistan? In this episode of the Misaal podcast, I'll be talking to Rafae Dossal. He's the co-founder and CEO of Waggles. Besides answering my questions about the market and the opportunities, he shares his insights on bootstrapping as well as scaling. I hope you enjoy my conversation as much as I did. Let's listen in. Welcome to the Misaal podcast, Rafae. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me here, Zahid. It's a pleasure meeting you in person, like I told you earlier as well. I'm doing well. Thank you very well for asking. And I hope you're doing well yourself.
Yes, I am doing really well. So because I was, doing some homework, trying to see if I could do some research on you and Waggles. And so I, of course, stumbled upon your podcast with Muzammil. And so in that podcast, during the conversation, you mentioned something that I was like, whoa. Basically, you said that you don't have any pets yourself. So is that still true? You still don't have any pets? That was in July. I don't know if it's changed.
Yes, that is actually very true.
Okay.
I used to be a pet parent myself back in the day. I grew up with dogs. My family is very big on animals. But as I grew up and then responsibilities grew as well along with that. So but when university and work life started, then basically I could not keep up with pets. So I haven't had animals of my own ever since then. But then we stumbled upon the idea of Waggles and we executed. And so far up till now, I do not own pets of my own, but I consider every pet mine that is owned by my consumer, basically. So they're like, I have a lot of pets that are not directly mine, but then again, indirectly, they are my pets.
That's awesome. Like that's just so, it's just so surprising to me. Like in the pure sense, like you jumped into something that you had the conviction. You were like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I don't need to have pets, but I know the business model. I understand this and I'm going to, try this out. So let's get started. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself, how did you stumble upon Waggles? Like, how did you go about like starting it? I wouldn't ask you what problem you're solving. You clearly you're beyond that because there's a market need. That's what you are basically satisfying. So how did you go about picking pet food, specifically that industry?
So basically, Zahid, there are lots of FMCG manufacturers based in Pakistan. It's a very, I'd say, an industry-rich country. In terms of all the other sort of consumer product packaged goods, as CPG industry to consumer packaged goods industry. So back in 2019, in the middle of 2019, we realized along with my co-founders that there is no one else doing pet food in Pakistan. Specifically, the sort of product that we wanted to manufacture where we use whole food ingredients to ensure that the product is of extremely high quality and it's of international standards for the markets that we want to tap. So the product that we came up with was, it's completely natural without the use of any preservatives or any artificial colors or anything of that sort. So it makes it very healthy for animals to consume. When we realized that there was no one doing it, we took around 6 months of research and development and recipe formulation to finalize the product and ensure that we could launch by January 2020. So we onboarded food technologists early in the day just to be sure as to what we're doing. My co-founder and I, we did animal nutrition courses as well. So that again, we were very sure about what sorts of product we are retailing in the market, even though it was very early on, but we just had to be double, triple sure because obviously animals' lives are at stake here. So it's not that we could just be packaging something and retailing under a nice brand name. It wouldn't make sense. After completing the course and the food technologies that we worked with, we came out with solid 2 recipes, adult dog food recipes. One was the chicken variant and the other one was the beef variant. Again, kept in mind that they're very high in moisture, high in proteins. They're superfood enriched, so they're good for the dog's health all in all. And after that, it was a challenge for us to penetrate in the market at that time because the economic situation was very different back in 2020. So considering that the dollar price has increased and how Pakistan has become, a little aware of the fact that either we need to localize on a lot of stuff or it's going to be problematic as an industry for us to operate. So Pakistan basically consumes around 40 crore rupees of pet food annually as of last year. So that's a huge number. And again, there's a lot of gap in the market for us to come up with more offerings and to identify newer segments. So we launched cat food, we launched dog treats, natural single ingredient dog treats. So we started off with 2 SKUs and now we are at a total of 10. And we plan on taking the number up to 22 or 24 SKUs by the end of this fiscal year, inshallah. And a little bit about my background, I graduated in 2016 After that, I worked for a handful of FMCG companies. I've worked for biscuit manufacturers. I've worked for tea whitener manufacturers and in the dairy segment. So, and I've also sold chips. So yeah, it's been a confectionery and biscuits and dairy. So it's been quite a mix of two, three things. And I worked in digital advertising as well for a little time. That gave me insights on how to build a direct to consumer brand. Although none of the brands that I previously worked with were direct to consumer in that sense, but this was something that I was really big on. So we launched initially in January 2020, and COVID hit Pakistan by the end of March 2020. So it was a staggering point in our lives along with my co-founder as to what we want to do. I mean, because a lot of businesses were deciding to shut shop essentially because they didn't know how to go forward with it. At that point in time, it was a clear choice. We amplified on our e-commerce sales because we went completely direct to consumer at that time. And if you're aware of Daraz, the marketplace platform, we leveraged those along with our own website, Waggles.pk, and we went nationwide through that window. So that gave us good traction because people were already inside their home. They were ordering things online. E-commerce activity was already like off the charts early COVID. So it made sense for us to introduce our brand to Pakistan and to pet parents over here. And it worked really well for us at that time.
Hearing you talk about these things, because, I have spoken to other e-commerce, digital store owners and all that in the past, but you are very different because you are not selling someone else's product, or you're not sourcing a product and then selling it. You are making what you're selling. So that in itself has a lot more challenges. So if I were to ask you, like, what was your assumption before going into the business that was tested right away, that you were like, you know what, we will figure this out, but you were completely off base?
I'd say the one thing that we did not have figured out when we were starting was the pricing. So when we started off, we just made sure that all our costs are being met. I mean, whatever the cost we landed on, for example, say around 180 rupees. So we started retailing at 200 rupees. We did not really put a lot of thought into the process as to how much profit margin do we want to jack up on the product and then retail. We just wanted to keep the product offering at the lowest possible cost and ensure that it's reaching the consumers at the fastest possible pace. So even in Karachi, we did deliveries ourselves. And for all of the rest of Pakistan, we did not have a third-party larger vendor like TCS or anyone else on board. What we did was we hired independent, smaller distributors in small towns. So that gave them access to retail to smaller stores within their cities as well, where they have the demand for the product. And at the same time, they were executing our e-commerce orders as well. So direct to consumer side is a channel that is very much under-tapped in Pakistan for a lot of brands. This is something that not many brands leverage over here, considering that it's not scale nahi hai or consumers are not that aware. However, I would disagree with that because the category that we're working in, we have very high average order values, and it's a repeat purchase category. And once basically a consumer likes the product, they will be buying it for their pet over and over again on a monthly basis. So we work on subscription models as well. That is something that has worked brilliantly with us. We offer discounts on a yearly long subscription through our own website. So that is something that consumers benefit out of. And overall, we have a larger Waggles family in that essence.
So you talked about pricing, the pricing, you did not know what to charge. So when you started charging what you ended up charging people, was there, when it comes to pets, I personally feel like if people own pets, then they have this tendency to, take care of their pets, like generally speaking, of course. So they wouldn't care about, are they very price sensitive? That's the question I'm trying to ask. Are they price sensitive, or are they like, okay, or have they reached out to you and said, you know what, this is ridiculous. This is Pakistan made. Why are you charging so much?
So Zahid, basically, this category is price sensitive. All in our scenario as well, if you look at it in that essence, our customer is different and our consumer is different. So we sell our product to someone, and the animal that's consuming our product is the end consumer. So it's a two-step validation that we need to do. Firstly, if the packaging is good enough, if the price is good enough for the customer to buy the product for their pet, and the second test is whether the pet will enjoy the product or not. So it's a two-dimensional thing where the customer who picks up the product from either the shelf or orders it online needs to be sold on the packaging and the pricing, right? And on the information and the content of the brand. So that's the first bit that we had covered. And of course, the product is of such natural quality that we do have a very clear communication where we say that for dog food, we give out a clean board guarantee. The fact that there is no dog that I've come across who would leave out product and not finish it completely. So this is a proud moment for us as manufacturers that we don't add anything for palatability to the product. It's natural, hence it's more receptible to the animal, essentially. I didn't ask you, by the way, do you have pets?
Yeah, I do. I have two cats. Yes.
Then you do realize that cats, for instance, they are very difficult water drinkers, right? They don't really like to drink water, or if it's kept in a bowl or something, just like drinking from a flowing stream of water. So when we were developing our cat food recipes, what we did was we made recipes with real bone broth in them. The whole idea is to give cats healthy hydration through their food source. So it's a mix of fish or chicken, and then we have soup-based broth in it, so that it's attractive for cats and they get their source of hydration from the food that they're eating, unlike dry food products, basically. So when you talk about pricing, Zen, when we started off, we were priced at 200 rupees. Then consumers, we had to increase the price to rupees 300. That's also because that we have professional distributors who are retailing a product nationwide in large chain stores like Imtiaz, Al Fateh across the nation. In the same manner, we have GST incorporated in our product. Obviously, it is illegal. I would consider it as a crime to be retailing in Pakistan without paying tax to the government. Hence, we are a GST registered private limited company that is ready for exports as well. So when we factor in all these things, we still as manufacturers are not profit. Obviously, we're a for-profit business, but making exorbitant amount of profits on the local market is something that we're not looking at, because we have to keep the end consumer in mind, right? We can't obviously increase our profit margins to the extent that our own volume sales drop. So considering all of this, we are still, I'd say, very reasonably priced as compared to imported products. Ever since the ban had been in place, and now the ban has been taken off, but the regulatory duties on the pet food category have still been increased, which basically means that an SKU, an imported canned food, would in Pakistan now cost about, say, 600 rupees for a dog, and we are priced at 300 rupees after paying taxes and distributor costs and all of that stuff. So we're at half the price and double the better quality as compared to international products being imported in Pakistan.
When you talk about the wet food, so I can't really relate to that, because the two cats we have, they eat dry food. Does that mean there is like logistically like challenges involving making sure there's a certain temperature, it stays a certain way, and when it's distributed or when it's shipped to the customer, it gets in a form that you would like?
Food canning, Zahid, is basically a method of preservation of food that ranges back to the World War era, right? So it's one of the most safest ways of preserving food without having to add anything to it. The only things that would make any difference would be the ingredients that we're using. So there are multiple, I'd say there are hundreds of canned food manufacturers in the world, but there are only a handful that make products like we do. So there are companies based out of Thailand that make products like ours. That's also because of their philosophy of pushing natural pet food in the market. So if you look at statistics globally, on a 10% annual rate, people are converting from dry food to wet food. That's also because consumers have become more aware of the fact that wet food has and carries more benefits towards the animal, and their health is in better shape by consuming. Their research is done on this. It's not just I'm just stating it out of the fact that I'm a wet food manufacturer, but the fact that people are shifting onto wet food from dry food because of the health benefit that it offers, and especially the ones that are made with natural ingredients. So you have brands like, I name a few as well, like internationally you have brands like Pedigree or Whiskas. I'm sure you're aware of Whiskas, the wet food, canned food product. But the product ingredient list, if you just happen to read it, it's a little, I wouldn't say sketchy. It's just that it's a mass market product, right? So it's not like they're adding a lot of value in terms of nutrition to the product naturally. They're adding a lot of nutrition to it artificially. There is no denying that. But natural sources से जो आपका उसमें use होता है ingredient, that makes a lot of difference overall to the animal's health. So, for instance, if we are to put in a protein powder, right, or we are to put in real chicken for more protein, I mean, it would make sense to be putting in real chicken content rather than protein powder for more protein.
When you talk about all these things, it seems like you have a really huge operation, right? What are we talking about in terms of how big is the team?
So we are 3 co-founders in total. The other 2 besides me have an expertise in food production way before than I do. And the reason why I also partnered up with them, because it made sense as to how we want to scale the operation further, right? Like I myself come from a marketing and sales background, But to build an industry, we're not just building a brand based in Pakistan, we're building an industry. We took up an initiative of putting all these smaller pet food manufacturers together, coming together with them, so that we can present a united front to the Ministry of Commerce in Pakistan and inform them of the fact that we have a certain production capacity, other 4 5 players have a certain production capacity, and if we put all of that together, we're not just able to fulfill Pakistan's demand, we're also able to export from Pakistan. Hence the reason why we were in talks with them, and the new SRO, when it came out after the import ban, when it was lifted, the regulatory duties have been increased by hundreds of percent, right? The reason why is because there are local manufacturers like us who are doing quality work in Pakistan. Quality again is, let's say, a little subjective, but I can't speak for everyone over here. But in our scenario, at least, I'm very sure of the fact that what we're pushing in the market is completely safe for animals to consume. Let me come just back down to the co-founder question that you asked. So the other two with me, they look after production and supply chain and ensuring that our operations are smoothly run on the factory side. So we basically built our facility. When we started in 2020, all of that was, I'd say, a pilot phase. Like the last 6 months of the fiscal year of 2020, basically January to June, we spent analyzing whether the product market fit exists. Once we realized post June 2020 that yes, the product that we're making, consumers are enjoying it, and now we need to scale it further to reach more consumers. So from September 2020 to February, March 2021 is the time when we really amplified our operations in building our own facility. Our facility is also based in Karachi. It was a conscious choice of making it in Karachi so that we're closer to the port, so that we can easily do that. And we are very aggressively looking onto the export angle as well. We've locked distributors in Mozambique, in Africa, and in Dubai and UAE. So these are the two markets that we want to be entering as soon as this next quarter starts, say from October onwards. And so we in our production capacity right now, we can manufacture about 1,200 tons of pet food annually. That I wouldn't say is not a very big number. I'd say it's a reasonable number to be catering the local market and being eyeing exports. So it's not, I'd say, that we've set up a facility that's insanely massive, the size of Purina, Nestle Purina, or any of those. However, we are an ISO registered facility. We are going towards having our BRC certification sorted as well as our HACCP certification sorted. So we are more focused on quality rather than on the magnitude of the overall operations.
But if you had to put a number on a team, the number of people involved,
we have a current staff of say 15 people. That is excluding the co-founders who look after the situation over there. So we have say 3 in finance, 4 in supply chain. The rest is core production. So along with those, if you put them together, there's a number of say good, healthy 14, 15 people who are looking after the factory in Karachi. Towards our sales operations, we started off with a team of 7. Now we're growing that gradually as we're expanding further into Pakistan. First, we had a small sales team operation in Lahore and a small sales team operation in Karachi. We now are focusing on Islamabad and upwards, hence KPK is a segment that we're looking into. I'm sure you're aware of the floods that are happening in Pakistan this year has started in a very devastation sort of a way for the country. So we can all hope for the best as to how it turns out to be. But we are very optimistic on our sales plan for this year as to how we can build on what we did last year.
When we talk about, for example, when you started the business, you put up a website, did you start social media campaigns to see if there was interest in online orders, or were you doing door-to-door marketing where you were going to distributors or supermarket chains and trying to sell it to them? Was there a difference in was it 50-50, was it 60-40? How did you go about marketing Waggles?
Basically, Zahid, when we started off, we were I'd say 100% focused on digital. See, the dynamic in Pakistan is also of the sort, if you manage to push something nicely on digital, you are able to get more eyeballs online as compared to offline. So that's the channel that we utilized. We also targeted some key retail stores in Karachi, the ones that are catering to the niche audience of Karachi. So we went to them and we spoke to them directly, and we inducted our products over there. So once it started picking up from those shelves, then the rest of the city stores also started demanding the product, because it's I'd say a fear of missing out. There's a lot of FOMO sort of a situation happening here. When you just retail to high-end stores, and the lower-end stores then also they aspire to buy that product because they know that it's retailing fast in the market. So that's the sort of strategy that we took in terms of retail. We targeted the higher stores first, and then we took on the smaller stores later. Currently, we are retailing at about, I'd say, over 800, between 800 and 900 stores nationwide. So that's a massive number to be starting with in the span of, say, a year. And our proper retail operations also went up to, I'd say, they started off in the mid of last year, that it went through like nationwide properly in terms of modern trade retail for larger stores like Imtiaz and Alfaz, etc. But with our marketing, we started off with social media. When our first website was built, I am very proud to say that I built it myself on this platform called Wix.com. It's a drag and drop down sort of website. It's a very easy thing. So this is one thing I'm sure that people listening to this podcast will also get inspiration from, the fact that you don't need to have a very solid tech team or a development team to be able to do these things. If you're committed to the cause and you're like 100% in it and you jump in with both feet, then you've got to somehow make it land, right? There were a lot of sleepless nights done in the sense that the website was built, the colors, the brand, all of them things were sorted. The packaging that we designed, we got it done through a freelance designer. And then, we had to put, considering that we were a very small scale venture back then, we had to make the best of our resources and put everything together. But now we're very proud of the fact that we are a full-fledged WooCommerce running store that's being maintained by professionals. They're doing coupon campaigns, they're tying up with influencers to make sure that we have solid on digital marketing and influencer marketing. So all of that is coming together, I'd say, now. But the effort that gone into it, the year and a half, the struggle that was initially done was important to get to where we are and grow from that point onwards.
So as far as I know, you haven't raised any funding, right? Like you are bootstrapping it, so your own money that you're...
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any plans to raise money?
I'd say not right now, Zahid, to be very honest, because we were reached out by a couple of private equity people in Pakistan. See, the thing in Pakistan is that ever since the whole VC funding era started, I say again 2019-ish, 2020-ish, so everyone's out to making apps like one another, and everyone's up for raising funds and But the achievement here, Zahid, is the fact that you even raise money when you have a solid business, not the other way around. I mean, I may be a little old school like that, but some people raise money and then build a business. I'm of the different view that you first build a business. That may take time. It's not possible, it may be possible in the tech space, but in the pet food space, in the consumer good category that we are working in, it's a little longer haul. So you can't be considering, for instance, a lot of people ask me, what's your exit plan? Like, do you plan on exiting from what you're doing right now? I'm like, I haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg as yet, and we're just figuring out what we're doing. So it's a little early to speak about exit plans, but the fact that currently the private equity investors that I spoke of right now, we also I personally bought a couple of quarters from them so that we could reconnect after that and ensure that we can take this forward then. But up until now, this is a completely bootstrapped venture funded by the three of us, the three co-founders that are working together. Yeah, so we may be having plans by the end of next year, but this fiscal year, we want to take it solo, I'd say, like just three of us, and see how we land through it.
So no matter what you do, like I'm giving you unsolicited advice here, but no matter what you do, don't sell to Nestle. Just don't do that.
Actually, Zahid, Nestle has amped up their operations in India. So the reason I also mentioned India a lot in Muzammil's podcast as well, and I do so frequently in articles as well, is the fact that they are a very similar demographic like ours. And the fact that the population over there, we can very much relate to it. Just the size and the magnitude of that population is massive as compared to us. But then again, the demographics are more or less the same. So I was reading this article the other day that there are about 28 million dogs registered in India, which is a big number. If you look at the same statistic in Pakistan, so firstly, we have a big data gap in Pakistan, right? So the only statistic that I can quote you of is of 2016, which is essentially, I'd say, redundant now. But in Pakistan, as of 2016, there were only 200,000 registered dogs. So, ek taraf you're saying that there are 28 million dogs, and the other side you're saying there are only 200,000 dogs. So, for India, a pet food operation running over there, the local market is substantial enough, and they wouldn't even have to consider about exporting from there if they want to straighten out the unit economics. But manufacturers like us in Pakistan, we don't do injustice to our audience by putting in crap ingredients. So we just ensure that we are very big on quality. But at the same time, we need to be amping up our export operations to make our whole operation sustainable. And that's the vision that we're working with, so that we can not just, again, like I was saying, that we're not just building a brand, we're building a category. And essentially, we want to position Pakistan as a global player in pet food exports, just like Thailand did. They had this plan 20 years ago, where they envisioned themselves at the top list of pet food exporters. And as of last year, they've positioned themselves as number 3 in the world. So that's a big number. This is something exactly what we're eyeing at to make the country, self-supporting first and foremostly, so that our import reliance on pet food is zero. That is something that we need to do first, and then alongside that, we need to ensure that we position ourselves as people who make quality pet food for the world rather than import it ourselves over here.
So I had a question, but I forgot. So, I was going to ask you. So this is a dumb question because I'm not really aware about pet industry in Pakistan. So do people in Pakistan have pets or have certain breeds, and then where do basically different breeds come to Pakistan from?
Over the years, Zahid, basically what has happened is that people do import a lot of different breeds over here. They have them breed with other animals here as well, like the similar breeds, to reproduce and get more animals and then sell them as well. So there are puppy mills happening here. People are doing shady breeding stuff. So that all of that is happening. Plus, Pakistan has a massive stray dog population, right? So coming to stray dog population, we considering that there are animal shelters that are in distress in the country. There are a few who are doing well for themselves, but there are many of them who are not known by other people, and they don't get that much traction. So for this purpose only, we built a tailor-built donation platform. There is no other pet food company in the world that has a sustainable 365-day a year pet food donation platform operational, right? So other larger companies, even in the US, we would agree with the fact that they have charity campaigns and they do small rounds of donations to shelters and stuff. But we didn't want, this wasn't sustainable for us, and it wouldn't make sense for us to be donating small amounts of stock to animal shelters. So what we did was we established this tailor-built digital experience where even you can log on to the website. You can select the animal shelter that you want to donate to. You can select what food bundle you want to send to the shelter, and then you can just pay through your card, hassle-free, and we'll ensure that the donation bundle is at the shelter within the next 24 hours. And this has earned us a significant amount of revenue. So this is creative e-commerce, right? I was thinking of another platform where we can retail our product while being looked at as a more empathetic brand. So we put this logic together and it worked brilliantly for us. We launched the campaign and earned quite a substantial amount of revenue while we helped out animal shelters. So this has become something that I'm really proud of, that there's no one other besides us in the world who's taken up this initiative to be doing this. So the more we amplify this, obviously the more better shape the animal shelters are in, and the animal welfare is taken care of over in the country, basically.
Yeah, so I heard when Muzammil's podcast, you also mentioned that you gave out samples. In Pakistan, no one gives out samples for anything, right? People just don't do that. So I felt that was very kind of a creative way to market.
We have a page on the website that reads try a sample. So as a manufacturer, when we started off early, Zahid, I wanted to know my audience as to who is interested in buying from us. What's the situation happening? So we have people who order, and obviously we have the data that's with us, so that we can remarket to them and upsell to them. That makes sense. But at the same time, we wanted more data, and hence we wanted people to at least try a product. So a lot of times marketers talk about consumer acquisition cost. We boiled it down to something very basic. So what we did was each of our can, like I told you, the dog food can costs rupees 300. The cat food can cost around 250 rupees. In today's day and age, that's a little over $1. So when we send out samples, people request for a sample, we have the data, we send out the sample to them. And once that consumer likes the product and buys again from us, he's part of our customer cycle, right? And then we can eventually, over a larger period of time, gauge their lifetime value as well as to how much revenue they've contributed as a consumer towards a brand. In that sense, to acquire that customer, if my cost is $1, that really does not cost me anything, because the fact of the matter is I want to increase my reach as well, right? So we're very proud of things that we've done in a very low cost that could have been substantially higher. But there is no better marketing than sending out a quality product to the customer free of cost for them to first try out, so that they can believe and see the fact that there are actually real ingredients in the product, and it's not just that there's a marketing claim to it. So that really worked for us.
So one question, while you're talking about all these things like the natural ingredients and all that stuff, does the average pet owner in Pakistan, do they understand these things? Like in the sense that, are you like educating them also when it comes to certain things, or like are they, because based on like, the fact that they have a pet, they are already aware of the fact that is what their pet likes. So all they have to do is like figure out where to get the food from, and that's it.
So basically, I'd say it's a two-way sort of situation where consumers first, they're adopting pets or keeping pets, so that's a first for them. But most of the times, I think where people are not really aware of the fact as to what to feed the animal, right? So in most situations, they just feed them whatever is cheaper. Hence, we come to the point of being price elastic as a category. So if you reach a certain threshold in the pricing, you're out of the consumer's decision-making process, and they'll consider you either too expensive or too cheap, and they'll just leave you out over there. But yes, the trend is changing. People are becoming more aware. We are educating them on what sort of recipes are good for animals and what's good for them. For instance, grain-free is something that's very big for pets, right? Especially for cats, because animals, dogs 400 years ago were not omnivores, right? We've domesticated them and converted them over a span of 4 centuries to become omnivores, to live with us in houses. They have vegetables, and they have this cuteness that's now in them, which was not there 400 years ago. They were kept for either hunting or for shepherd purposes or something of that sort. But now, when we consider dogs nearly as omnivores and cats as real carnivores, so the fact boils down to the fact that they should not be consuming grain-based products that essentially give them a lot of health problems over a course of time. For example, dogs cannot digest grain, and it does not make sense to be adding grain to any of their recipes unless it's a good source, right? So, for example, if you have brown rice that you're putting in the product or something that's actually good for humans, it's not very different for animals in that sense. For cats, they can't have grain, so hence you don't even give. They need fiber, right? So they need to be some sort of fiber. You use pumpkin, you use, for example, sweet potatoes. There are all sorts of good stuff that you could be using, which is, yes, costlier than cheaper grains such as, I'd say, corn, for example. The US, for example, is one of the largest manufacturers of pet food. Pedigree brand जो वहाँ से manufactured भी होता है under the Mars International Corporation. So they have such large quantities of corn growing in the US that they end up putting that in pet food or in landfills. So you can understand what the comparison going on over here is, as to you putting in all sorts of rodent meat, dead meat, roadkill meat, zoo dead animals meat, and then you put in stuff like corn just for filler purposes. So instead of putting in fillers in the product, you focus on nutrition. So that's the sort of philosophy that we're going with. And yes, we are educating consumers along the way, and it is working. Because people do take interest in their pets more than in themselves, actually. Even in today's day and age, if you see an urban consumer in Pakistan who has a pet, they would be spending more on the pet as compared to them on themselves. So it's a conscious choice to be spending a lot on their animals, because it's I wouldn't say a replacement for a child, but then again, it's no different from a child.
So we touched on this a little bit earlier. Where do you see yourself in like 5 years, 10 years? Where are you going? Like, what does your future look like as far as you are concerned right now? I know you mentioned Dubai and all those things. Are you going to expand, or even Mozambique, right? So are you going to start focusing more on the export market, or are you still planning to, focus on the local market?
Okay, so Zahid, basically, again, this is like a two-way street situation. Reason being that in Pakistan, we currently started off with wet food. Okay, so why did we start off with wet food? It's not that it was not coincidental that we just launched with the wet food product. We had a very solid plan as to first, every consumer, when they're trying out a product, they need to have a reason to believe behind it, right? In marketing terms, we call it the RTP. So we had a clear differentiator. We had natural ingredients, and when you pop the can open, you can actually see natural ingredients. So that's where we started off with building a trust with the consumers that we're selling to. So that's the reason why we first started off with wet food. Now we have plans for dry food as well. So while we're doing wet food locally and planning on exporting it internationally, we want to launch dry food locally as well. So we're imploding into the local market with wet food as well as pressing on with dry food. Whereas we're starting off slowly and gradually, very small, and I'd say concretely in our export operations, to ensure that we don't have any recalls or any sort of mess up situations. I can proudly, Zahid, also say that we're probably the only manufacturers in Pakistan in pet food who haven't had a single recall as of yet. So last year we retailed around 160,000 cans. That was a big number. That's around, I'd say, 12,000 cartons of pet food that we sent out across Pakistan to distributors, to consumers, to everyone included. So, considering that, we have plans of around, say, double of that this year. So, we had to be very sure about our certifications and our processes and our SOPs that we've designed, because recalling in terms of products or pet food brands is disastrous. There was a time when people questioned chicken source from China. Hence, a lot of brands under the Nestle Purina name also died away because their authenticity and the credibility of ingredient usage was questioned. So these are the things that we want to stay away from, not just for exports, also for local. So we're taking it, I wouldn't say slow, but we're taking it very step by step and calculated, in a very calculated manner, so that there is no loss of life, there is no loss of product, there is no loss of brand, basically, and no loss of revenue, of course. So rather than just raising money and just going kaboom with it, like going crazy in exports and stuff like that, we plan on taking it very slowly so that there is no problem that we face. So if you ask like a 5-year plan, I'd say we have 8 countries that we want to tap into. But the 4 or 5 major ones that I'm mentioning right now are the ones that we want to establish by the end of this fiscal year, which is first Dubai, then there's Africa. Once we are done with our BRC certifications, we are good to green to retail in the UK. So these are the 2-3 countries that we're planning on exporting to right now. And then moving forward, the world is open for us to be positioning ourselves as global players in the market.
Yeah, I mean, your journey has been, it's like fascinating. Like you are already a success story without raising money.
Zahid, actually, I mean, I'm very happy to hear you say that. But the fact is that we still operate and we are of the startup mindset because it keeps the team together, and plus it keeps the veins in the blood flowing. Because if I, for example, even if my teammates are like, often they say, okay, so where we started off from and where we are right now. This venture, Zahid, started off with me and my co-founder cooking in his kitchen on a stove with a pot of say 5 kg of dog food, and we're stirring it and we're cooking it. So we started off from there, and 2.5 years later, we're at a point where we're talking about positioning Pakistan as a global player in pet food exports. So it's been quite a journey, but it is honestly the startup mindset that has kept us alive, and it is this particular mindset that wants us to be, hitting the nail really hard and being, ready for doing things that we were not ready to do back in the day. So it's always onwards and upwards. It's the mindset that makes a lot of difference. And again, I just want to share as a little inspiration over here that there's literally, nothing that a person or 2-3 people who they're passionate about something. So there is nothing stopping them from achieving that. Pakistan is a country where you can take the maximum number of risks and retail products and test with the audience, because the audience base is so large. So if you're in some other part of the world, you may not have that many consumers that you can test with, or you get feedback from, or understand what sort of product market fit that you want to identify. So yeah, I mean, I just say that it's an amazing journey so far, and there's a lot to look forward to, and we're very hopeful to cracking it big in pet food.
You mentioned something very interesting, which is something I also believe, which is basically you can sell the raw materials to maybe export the raw materials for $2, but then if you make a brand out of it, you can charge $10 for it. So I just don't think there is that kind of mindset in Pakistan in general, because very risk averse, right? People, you have to try, and you'll fail, you'll try and you'll fail, and then eventually you will get there. So there's a lot of trial and error, but if you're just exporting the raw materials, you don't have to worry about it because there's already market out there and all those things.
See, we as a country need to get over the fact that we're going to import finished goods and then we're going to export raw materials. We'll always be in a current account deficit or whatever deficit that we will be in. But it's not a logical standpoint, right? We need to be exporting value-added products like complete finished goods, and we need to be importing ingredients rather than the other way around. There was this company that recently started exporting offals and other leftover meat to some manufacturer in Europe or in America, and the headline read that they're the first pet food exporters out of Pakistan. However, that was very misleading because of the fact that they're not exporting value-added products, they're exporting just raw material for some other manufacturer, and in the end, you will be importing a particular pet food brand made by that manufacturer, paying duties and bringing it into the country. I understand trade is good, but then again, as a country, we need to be thinking about where our future lies. and how we should be benefiting out of it.
Excellent. Well, it was amazing hosting you on the Misaal podcast, and I got to learn a lot about you. Even though like you had like your story like at Muzammal's podcast, I still got to learn a lot more about you, and I'm sure the audience did too. And like you are on a great trajectory. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Zahid. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for hosting.
Thanks for listening to the Misaal podcast. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and will thank me by writing a review or sharing it on social media. Make sure you follow and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks again. See you soon.